So just give us a little bit of background, Mike, about who you are.
A year or two ago, I first heard about smart meters. Didn't, whenever you first hear about something, you don't know much about it by definition, but I saw an advert standing on a train station and it was talking about smart meters and selling it on the basis that these things were going to be the next generation utility meters and energy meters, and didn't really say much more than that. And about 12 months ago, I happened to meet a representative of an organisation called Mass Sanity, which campaigns about the dangers of wireless technologies, in particular mobile phones. And Sarah, she switched me on to the dangers associated with radio frequency, electromagnetic radiation, and in short order, I basically did my own research, as I encourage everybody to do, on the subject, and the deeper I dug, the more I found that horrified me about what we simply weren't being given access to in terms of the huge number of studies that have been done which show physiological harm associated with RF EMR, electromagnetic radiation. We can talk about the standards that we have here in the UK later, but around about the same time, I heard about smart meters. I did more research into what these things did as well, and I happened to get sent details of a petition that was actually being run by ESUK, which is an electrosensitivity charity. And they were asking for support on, petitioning the government for a wired alternative to smart meters. And I can explain a little bit about how smart meters work. But, the bottom line was that, ESUK and its members, I think they have about 800 members, were particularly worried about the fact that smart meters are using extremely powerful pulsed microwave, technologies to broadcast our electricity, gas and water usage back to utility HQs. And ESUK represents people who suffer recognisable effects, immediate effects associated with exposure to electromagnetic radiation. But as I learned more about just what smart meters are, what they do, how they work, I realised that a wired alternative falls very short of my view of what an ideal kind of energy solution should look like, and there are dangers associated with other elements to smart meters. Privacy is a major one. Safety and security. Higher bills is a big one as well, particularly for people on fixed incomes. So I decided to set up a campaign with a friend of mine who is she was a GP. She now runs a natural health practice, and she's a self-diagnosed and self-recovered electrosensitivity sufferer. And so we now run stopsmartmeters.org.uk. We're very much a grassroots organisation. We're just trying to reach out to others to provide the information that people, useful information so people can look into this issue for themselves. The way we see it, the only way we're going to stop this monster from happening is by direct action by people exercising their lawful right to refuse a smart meter or multiple smart meters when they're offered one. To say no to these things, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to encourage people to look into this issue and to say no effectively.
So what are our rights in regards to the installation of them?
Well, you've talked about some very interesting areas in what the show's about, and I'm sure you've had interesting guests and talked about interesting subjects in the past. As far as I know, we're governed by consent. So, if you don't want to have a smart meter, you don't have to have one. The position that the government have issued on this is that, and this was recorded in Hansard in November last year, is that smart meters are not obligatory. The actual wording was quite interesting last year in that they said we are not going to be expecting energy suppliers to seek a warrant to install one.
Interesting. They're not obligatory, but actually we may actually be coming into your property anyway.
Kind of interesting that they chose to use that sort of language.
Yeah.
But yeah, in follow-up letters that we've seen and received, that the government's made it clear that the adoption of a smart meter on an individual basis will be voluntary, and you don't have to have one. But as we can maybe go on to talk about, that doesn't mean that you won't be affected by smart meters. If you successfully defend yourself against the propaganda onslaught by big energy and big utility, and you're not wowed by the very high budget adverts that are currently hitting our screens for smart meters, and you manage to successfully refuse one of these meters despite all the sales pushes that you might be getting from every angle. Your neighbour, it's likely, very likely in fact, that your neighbour doesn't know about smart meters at the moment, let alone knows how they work. And if, like me and most people, you have quite a few neighbours, and you've suddenly, found yourself in a situation where you've refused a smart meter, but 5, 6 of your neighbours haven't, it's likely that you're still going to be impacted by these smart meters, particularly from a health point of view, because the radio frequency pulses that these things emit to get your data or your neighbour's data back to the local cell towers have to pass through, humans are in the way of these antennas and these smart meters, so, and it's really bad news from a health point of view. So this is why we're trying to raise the alarm. It's not just about you saying no, it's also about you trying to engage at a local level with your neighbours and try to provide people with some awareness and education about these things as well.
It's a really interesting point about engaging the neighbours, because I've started putting posters up around where I live, because I actually live in a flat, and the meters are actually placed on the outside of my flat at the moment, and my biggest fear is that they will come, and even though I may say no and actually have mine not as a smart meter, my neighbour is highly unlikely to do the same thing. She's elderly and wouldn't want the hassle of going through, trying to prevent them from doing that. So I have a big fear, because I will have multiple meters on the outside of my property probably.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've sought clarification, which we're yet to receive, about what safety checks have been done, not just on exposure to one meter, but multiple meters. So, and I've also met with people who suffer from electrosensitivity so badly. One poor lady who lives in southwest London is so concerned about smart meters and the level of anxiety and sleeplessness and headaches and heart palpitations that she currently gets just from her neighbour's Wi-Fi. She actually thinks smart meters are going to kill her.
And is that, fundamentally, if you take it back to what they are doing, and I'm sure you'll cover off some of actually what the radiation does, she's probably not wrong.
Yeah. Well, I've spent a little bit of time with her, and she has got very clear evidence from her point of view that when she is exposed to electromagnetic radiation, she suffers physical effects, and when she's been able to get away from the electro smog, she holidays down in the Isle of Wight and Dorset, and she's been lucky enough to find areas that haven't yet succumbed to the level that much of London has. The symptoms go away. One point I'll make here is that unfortunately, because of the fact that we don't tend to get quite the accurate picture of things in the mainstream media. Electrosensitivity is still regarded as a psychosomatic state of mind. There was a program on a couple of months ago called Bang Goes the Theory. It was a BBC production, and they promised to look at all of the science behind electromagnetic radiation. It was a half-hour-long program, if I remember correctly. They basically took 2 studies, one of which didn't prove that electromagnetic radiation caused physiological harm, and the other one they said was still work in progress, which is a 20-year study called Cosmos. that if I remember correctly, they're rerunning in order to get better quality data. So I don't know what that tells you, but the fact of the matter is that there are more than 5,000 studies which show biological and harmful effects to humans, animals, and plants associated with this kind of radiation. But we now have some backup for these people that suffer from electrosensitivity in the form of a chap called Professor Dominique Balpome, who runs a practice in Paris, and he's managed to develop a process which provides a means of directly identifying through brain scan technology whether somebody does suffer from electrosensitivity or not. So I'm hopeful that the electrosensitivity community will be vindicated at some point, and that their condition will be shown to be real. It's regarded as a functional impairment in Sweden. Unfortunately, though, in the UK and other places, it's not recognised as a disease, and it is therefore it's not talked about in medical school. So if you go and have a chat with your doctor, they won't have the training to be able to recognise this as a condition. And the alarming thing is that there is a view that 30% of the population have some form of electrosensitivity, but most people don't realise it. There is a view that 1 in 20, so 5% of the population, have acute sensitivity to electromagnetic radiation. The symptoms can range from headaches to a little bit of tiredness and fatigue, right through to nausea, heart palpitations, and these are things that people can actually recognise for themselves. The really worrying thing is that behind all of this, there are very, very serious biological effects associated with electromagnetic radiation that take us through the gamut of diseases. If you look at the work of Dr. Magda Havas or Dr. Simon McMillan, and a range of other, heroic researchers, Professor Olga Hansen in Sweden, Dr. Andrew Goldsworthy here in the UK, who's an honorary lecturer in biology at UCL. These guys have done, hundreds and thousands of studies between them and others, which show that exposure to low levels of electromagnetic radiation, well within the limits that we have here in the UK, cause everything from calcium ion damage in your cells to leukemia to brain glioma to death. So we have a major problem on our hands here, and it's about to get worse with this smart meter agenda.
It doesn't bear thinking about, really, in many respects. And I do know that the Prime Minister of Norway came out and talked about it. She used to be wasn't she the lead in the World Health Organization at one stage as well for one of the committees? Yeah,
Gro Brundtland.
Yes.
Absolutely. She got to the point where she had to insist people switch their mobile phones off in her office. And she was, a high profile, champion for the electrosensitivity community. But unfortunately, it's taking us far too long to wake up to this. And particularly the very, very harmful consequences associated with it.
I think, though, it's not about people don't, the wider general public don't know about it. I think it's very well known within the corporations that use it. I think they're just not putting it out there for the reason that actually they don't want us to know about it.
Well,
you may not want to comment on that, but I'll make that comment.
My view on this is that there is. I was responding to somebody on our website the other day who was poo-pooing the idea that Wi-Fi was harmful. We published a comprehensive rebuttal that 40 doctors and experts in the US and Canada had contributed to, that was correcting some gross misinformation that's being laid out about smart meters. And somebody decided to come on our site and basically level some ad hominem attacks at somebody that had already commented and accuse us of being nutters. And I'm more than happy. You say that people that tend to come on your show are very open-minded.
Yeah, they are.
That's great. Intellectual curiosity and intellectual solvency are absolutely what we need, but we have to get through to people who are a bit more closed-minded, or who simply don't know because they don't know what they don't know at the moment. So I try to remain fairly calm and level-headed in dealing with people that don't come at you with diffidence and instead try to attack. But we kind of got. I'm sorry, I've completely forgotten the question. Why you were where you were going with that?
It was very much that I was saying that although the wider population are not aware of the risks because it's hidden from them, I do feel that there is a body of people who know about it. The corporations know about it. So, for instance, the mobile phone companies know, but they hide it. And the electricity companies know, but they hide it. But personally, I have no doubt about that. And I think there's a wider agenda here from the EU because you've got the I can't remember what it's called, the internet. What they're doing with the internet. They're trying to link everything up with all of the
internet things.
Yes.
We talked about that. Yeah, the point I was coming to is that in part of my response to this guy, I actually looked at the big industries. His view was that people are living longer, so surely this can't be bad for our health. But the fact of the matter is that if you take the pharmaceutical industry as an indicator, a quick search online that I did from 2008-2009 showed that pharmaceuticals was the third biggest industry in the world. So if you look at that as a measure of our health, then apparently we're not awfully healthy. And we have a diabetes epidemic, we have cancers in all areas growing, we have an increase in autism, we have this disease that was never heard of previously called ADHD, which, Ritalin sales I understand are quite good as well. Across the chart, we have obesity, we have heart disease that's on the increase. We're not getting healthier whatsoever. And ironically, as part of that same bit of research, I found that the communications and wireless industry was the biggest industry that there is. So I don't know whether there's any link there, but it's quite interesting nonetheless. My point here is that there is enormous money behind this. So, cui bono? Who's really going to be championing for the precautionary principle here, for us to hold our horses when every single year we need to be demonstrating GDP growth, an increase in profits. The business environment that we have is absolutely about increasing the bottom line. The pharmaceutical industry is a massive industry in global revenue terms. Whether there's any link there, I don't know, but we have a number of industry-funded studies, one of which is called Ecolog, which was run by T-Mobile a number of years ago, and it was actually kept locked in the German language for a while until it was leaked to UK activists who had it translated. I've not read this study, I only found out about it a couple of days ago. But it shed some light on some very harmful effects associated with exposure to mobile phones, and that was industry-funded studies. What we like to see is independent studies which are conducted by people who have not got any financial ties and are not beholden to these industries. Because we need independent science. Science is supposed to be independent, supposed to search for objective truth, and unfortunately what we see is that there are massive flows of money towards areas that prove there is no harm, and funding seems to be cut off and access denied for people who are trying to conduct studies that will ostensibly prove theories that they have that these technologies are harmful. So,
which I know happens continuously over and over again in the different areas of industry where it's going against the grain, and the scientists are then, like you say, the funding is just stopped. And you look at Luc Montagnier, he was a Nobel Prize winning biologist, and he kind of accidentally has proven homeopathy, and he's been castigated for it. And fascinating, absolutely fascinating what happens. Now, interesting you talk about revenue, because when I was doing some research about this, I noticed that Origin, who are in Australia, they're the equivalent of our EDF over here in the UK, from what I can understand.
Yeah.
There was a show on, wasn't there? There was a documentary done by Jay Sarah, I think his name was. He was the consumer who was very well credentialed, who decided to take them on in some respect about the energy that was coming into his house after the smart meter had been installed and what he was being billed on. And he has qualifications in all sorts of things, didn't he? So they kind of, they couldn't pull the wool over his eyes by any stretch of the imagination, because he understood the metering, didn't he? He understood all of the kilowatts and in masses of detail, from what I could understand. And he was showing that actually that, because he was showing the different columns, and that one of them shows total energy sent to the house, and then one of them shows what he was being billed on.
Right.
And it was showing that he was, they were billing him for more energy that was actually being even sent to the house, wasn't it? So, and they actually acknowledge at the end that they couldn't cope with the smart meter billing.
Right. Yeah. This, maybe it's a good point to kind of get into how these things actually work.
Yes, please.
But yeah, that was a story that we posted on our site. If I'm thinking of the same one that you are, Debbie, which is the smart meter scandal exposed on Channel 7 in Australia.
Yeah, it's Channel 7. Yeah.
You know, these smart meters are ostensibly being sold to us on the basis that they're going to be providing us with an end to estimated billing and more accurate billing. And what was shown in Australia last year was that this is just not the case. Their bills have, in many cases, just gone through the roof. I mean, that was the first example that I've seen, I'll happily admit, of smart meters just providing completely inaccurate data, but I'm sure it won't be the last. But even where these things are working well, there was a study conducted in Toronto a short time ago, a 1-year study, which showed after a smart meter had been installed, energy bills went up in 80% of cases, often by more than 50%.
And this is what's happening over and over again. I've noticed from the research that I've been doing that the billing is significantly higher.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. You know, we are, as I mentioned earlier, living in a world where businesses have got to look after their shareholders, and those shareholders demand increases in profits. Otherwise, they will take their capital elsewhere. So your energy and utility company, if the CEO of that company is promoting the idea of introducing a technology which is going to reduce revenues and reduce profitability, that CEO is not going to last very long. But from where I'm sitting, those CEOs are receiving, and I'm not disparaging their fat cat paychecks, but, you know, they're getting very, very well paid, and it seems as though their jobs are very, very safe. You know, that they have spent enormous amounts of money lobbying and lobbying the government for these technologies, creating these technologies, promoting these technologies, and they're going to be spending a lot of money maintaining them as well. Another way in which this is being sold to us is that it will mean an end to home visits. That's rubbish. Analog meters at the moment have an average of about 50 years of life. A lot of these smart meters are going to require annual servicing, and they only have a 10 to 15 year shelf life. So they're going to be being replaced a lot more than ones we have currently. But if we talk about what these things are then and how they actually work.
Yes, please.
On it. Smart meters are described as new generation electricity, gas and water meters. They come in a variety of shapes and sizes. So we'll talk in kind of general terms. They are new generation in that and smart in inverted commas describes a whole series of technologies which in my view represent a threat to us in a number of areas. The big area is that these things use pulse microwave transponders to communicate your electricity, gas and water usage back to a local cell tower or as part of a mesh network within your neighbourhood. So it's likely that when all of these smart meters have been deployed, they'll be operating in a neighbourhood hub where your smart meter will be talking to your neighbour's smart meter and vice versa, and one lucky guy in the street, his smart meter or her smart meter will have the responsibility of communicating everybody's data back to the nearest cell tower. And this all happens in near real time. So some documents that were obtained as part of some legal proceedings in California showed that there was emphasis being placed on data transmission pulses, and this is the California Public Utilities Commission had, as part of the documentation it provided back to the judges as part of this case, had emphasised the fact that there were only transmissions of data back to the utility company 6 times a day. And if you take that just in its own right, then that's not inaccurate. The problem that we have is that this system has effectively a heartbeat, and what was shown was that these things actually pulse up to 190,000 times a day.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
So that's quite a lot more than 6 times a day. And we obviously only obtain this information as part of a court order. So there is, there is some careful wordplay happening here. But these pulses, we have a report which was written by Daniel Hurst, who is the senior nuclear policy lecturer at the University of Santa Cruz in California. And he had debunked a document, again, that had been provided by industry that had ostensibly shown that smart meters emit lower levels of radiation than mobile phones. And that is also totally wrong. Actually interpret the data correctly and don't, apply some creative science to it. Found was that smart meters expose the body to between 160 and 800 times as much radiation as mobile phones.
So what does that equate to in X-rays? Do you know?
I don't.
That's interesting. Okay, I might do that.
But yeah, it's not good levels, and we have thousands of studies that show exposure to mobile phones is catastrophically damaging to health. And I not feel it. I'm quite happy for people to kind of take a cynical view on this and say, well, I don't feel it, and I've been using a phone for 10 years, or 15 years, or 20 years, and I've not experienced any damage. Well, there's actually very few people that have been using a phone for that length of time and to any great degree. But if you want to take a look at, we've posted details of these 5,000 studies on our website. I haven't actually posted all of the studies, but you can see the authors, the titles, the dates, etc., the establishments that are part of on our site. One video that we posted, which was a presentation by Professor Dr. Henry Lai at the University of Washington. And this video alone should at least provide you with some cause for concern. He had, as part of his studies, exposed a cell, it was a monkey brain cell, to a mobile phone signal. I don't know for how long, you might have talked about it in the video, but there's so many studies on there that I can never remember all of the details. But what was shown quite clearly was a DNA strand deep inside this cell before and after exposure. And what's known as the comet assay. So these DNA strands actually look like little comets with tails coming off them. And it quite clearly showed that there was double-strand DNA fragmentation, large amounts of it, after exposure to mobile phones.
But the thing is that non-ionizing radiation is shown, and there's research going back over 50 years that it shows actually it causes DNA damage.
Yeah, exactly. We have health problems going on across the board, and I'm not going to say that this is all caused by electromagnetic radiation, but as you well know, Deb, that there are many toxins and dangerous, things for our health in the environment. This isn't going to be the only one, but that doesn't mean to say that just because there are other toxins and adjuvants in our environment that this is a good thing to roll out. It's not, and we're about to roll out a heck of a lot more of it. And in my view, we'll pay the piper in terms of continued decline in health as well.
The thing is that this radiation, it basically increases the permeability of the blood-brain barrier, and effectively this allows the toxicity in the body and the heavy metals and the chemicals that are already in our environment, in our body. Basically, it allows it to go through the membrane.
That's absolutely correct.
It is a complete nightmare in many respects. Once they create this mesh, we are permanently within it.
Yeah, that's right. Some of the problems that we've got a leaflet on our site which we encourage people to download and read, and if it resonates with them, to print it out and hand it to the neighbours. But we've included some common long-term systemic health effects on there, and from radiation it includes hormone disruption, DNA damage, leakage of the blood-brain barrier, sperm count reduction and damage, sleep disorders, learning difficulties, ADHD, dementia, cancer, including leukemia, and brain glioma, which are tumours. And we've also emphasised the point that pregnant women and children are particularly vulnerable. There was a Children with Cancer conference in London back in May, and the Sun newspaper reported on this. Professor Dennis Henshaw from Bristol University, I believe, said, we need to be having an open debate about this, about the problems that we're seeing here, and it's just not happening. There's a 50% increase in brain tumours in children in the last 10 years, and children whose immune systems are, not fully developed in many cases until they have reached adulthood, and a lot of their key health systems won't be fully developed in their childhood. Are particularly vulnerable to this kind of radiation. So we've got a major problem.
The thing is, the hospitals have been reporting for a long time now the increase in the tumours, particularly on the side of the head of children, and they're continuously being ignored. That is appalling. Absolutely.
The world over, that in many countries, governments say that mobile phone usage in under 16s should not happen, or it should be limited to emergencies only. And you've only got to step on the train or step out into the street to see how many kids are using mobile phones nowadays. We should have health warnings on these devices as a minimum. And quite clearly we don't. At what point that will happen? Will it be too late? We have studies again on our site which show damage to sperm, and sperm that's been exposed to sperm cells which have been exposed to radiation for even short amounts of time have been shown to have 3 times less vitality, 3 times less motility, and to die 3 times as quickly. And if I look around my social network, offline one, I have many friends and people that I know are struggling with conceiving and having to go to IVF clinics, and informal conversations that I've had as well with people who know others who work in IVF centres say that their clientele are getting younger. This really isn't right. So that we could talk about the health thing all day, and I have talked about on occasions the health thing all day, but this is really just the tip of the iceberg, because where this entire smart grid is going is a massive step too far, in my mind, into our other areas of our lives where this kind of technology simply isn't welcome.
But it's threatening our privacy as well as our health, fundamentally, isn't it? Because my understanding is that they're wanting to actually put chips into all new products, and then they can monitor the electricity and the usage of them, and which is from a business point of view, an absolute it's a brilliant idea, because it enables you to get into the homes of people to see actually how they use your product. On the other side of that, people who's watching the watchers?
Yeah, but the other side of it is control as well. So to kind of fill in any blind spots on this, we talked briefly about the Internet of Things, which again is only just beginning to enter the mainstream consciousness. But the Internet of Things is a very cuddly word for full spectrum surveillance of our lives. The Internet recently went through a major facelift, and I think I said this when I gave the talk in Dunstable. There is a protocol which effectively sits behind the Internet. So if you type into your web browser, tnsradio.com, what sits behind that name, that URL that you just entered, is a series of numbers which string together and talk to domain name servers and allow the correct web page to be presented back to you. And this currently uses IP version 4, Internet Protocol version 4, and apparently we are running low on these addresses, and some circles will say that we've run out, but the fact of the matter is the way in which these things are allocated, we have plenty of IP4 addresses still available to us to use, but despite that, IP version 6, which is the next generation of the Internet, has introduced a whole new raft of IP addresses. And there are now enough IP addresses within this IP version 6 range to allocate a dedicated IP address to every star in the universe. And it equates to 340 undecillion IP addresses. And I've never heard the number undecillion. One undecillion is a trillion. So we've now got 340 trillion IP addresses to choose from. And you can bet your bottom dollar that the reason why we need that many is not because we all need to go and create flashy new websites with hundreds of pages, although if everybody's going to go and do that for their own smart meter campaign, then great, let's try and use them all up. But
yes, please, everybody. Go on.
The reason why we need that many IP addresses is because there is a desire to allocate a unique IP address to RFID equipped products. And I nearly said appliances and devices then, but it goes way beyond that. The RFID sensors, RFID stands for radio frequency identifiers, and these RFID chips they store data about the product that they live on. They were introduced by Procter & Gamble over a decade ago, and like you say, there is a fairly valid business reason for having it. It provides better stock control. There's a desire to literally put this in everything we know and love. There will be a dedicated chip, placed, and these things are so small as well. I actually read a story this morning about edible microchips, which are coming in the form of smart pills.
Yes. Yeah. So you can effectively, the pharmaceutical industry, to monitor usage and compliance with prescriptions. Effectively, the medications have got a chip in them, which then they can actually track compliance with the medication, because most medications aren't taken as they're prescribed.
Right. And we wouldn't want anybody missing out on their pills, would we?
Well, and also, I read this is when I was training as a naturopath, so this is a while ago, probably 2007, I read this in Scientific America, and they were talking about the nanotechnology which they could spray onto food and then track it through the whole the whole process, so right from the plant where it's picked effectively all the way through the manufacturing process. So they could spray this nanotechnology onto it and track the food. Now they were talking about that back then, which means they probably had it before then, and so it's not impossible for them to put these RFID tracking devices into everything, and we would never know about it.
That's a really interesting point, Deb, and I was reading something recently as well, courtesy of the Western Aid Price Foundation, just a leaflet I picked up that was busting some common health fallacies, like 5 a day. And one of the points they made was that we're encouraged to eat at least 5 fruit and vegetable a day, but the fact of the matter is, quality is what we should be going for, and fresh organic produce, rather than something that from seed to store, there can be up to 10 applications of pesticides and insecticides. So I could actually see how in that scenario, you could potentially have 10 layers of nanotechnologies applied to it as well, in order to provide management and streamlining and efficiency generations at each of those stages.
Indeed. And whatever else they would like to place into us. because of course they can put technology in, and then you've got your whole tracking of people potentially, but also what else do they want to monitor about our bodies?
I mean, it seems as though we're kind of getting to the point where technology is moving from being our servant to being our master. This Internet of Things, again, it's a cuddly term. It's like the credit crunch. People didn't really have to do much homework to understand or to have a view that they understood what the credit crunch was about. But this Internet of Things is being sold with some really slick multimedia production, and again, high budget advertising, that's selling it in as a natural evolution in the human story. Wouldn't it be cool to be able to control your thermostat from your iPhone when you're, sitting in or standing in the queue at Tesco's waiting for your automated till to, push your RFID products through? And wouldn't it be great if you could have an online shopping list waiting for you that was built automatically when you remove things from the fridge and eat things from your cupboard? So this Internet of Things is effectively about microchipping everything as far as the eye can see, and a core requirement in this is for there to be a means of identifying how we're using these products, like you say, in our homes, and the smart meter provides that.
Well, it can profile us effectively, can't it? Because it has the ability to data mine significantly. And I know from a business point of view, because I used to work in business, to be able to have that level of data that these smart meters can give is really, really powerful for you to actually design your products. But actually, that data mining is huge, and the companies are making no bones about the fact that they're selling that data. And it was a hacking forum I was reading at one stage, and these guys had they'd put a conference together, and they were talking, and they were showing, in fact, the ability to tell what film the individual was watching, when they'd got up, what actual appliances, so they could actually tell the brand of the appliances because of what they were doing, and the ability of knowing whether it was children using it, so the childlike appliances, or whether they were adults in the house. It was absolutely fascinating. These guys had drilled it right down, and they were spot on in regards to what they were reading from this meter.
Yeah. Well, you've done your homework, Debbie, and that's something that a story, it was from a convention in Berlin, I think it was, a couple of years back, and that was a video that we posted on our site. And this is not fiction. These smart meters are so smart, they're able to tell what content you're watching on television. A lot of the appliances that we're getting nowadays, and if you take into account the fact that we have planned obsolescence in the market now as well, a film that we published by Cosimo Danarizza on our site, go and have a look at it, it's great. It's called Pyramids of Waste, and it tells the story of how a group of enterprising industrialists back at the turn of the last century got their heads together and said, our products are lasting too long, we're making them too well, we won't have a business if we carry on like this, or at least we won't be driving, the new Fords that are coming onto the market, or whatever it was at the time. We need to build in failure to the product, and that's exactly what they've done. I mentioned the fact that my iPhone, when I was a mobile phone user, died 2 years to the day after I bought it, and which just so happened to be the end of the contract. And Apple Technologies actually talked about in this film as well. So have a look at it. But we are having these, we have this consumerist zeitgeist at the moment within our society, where people are constantly buying products to make themselves feel better. And we have, and as far as I can see, that's driven by low self-esteem. We seem to have lost our connection to the natural environment. We seem to have lost the ability to think for ourselves and to identify, when we're being targeted by emotional rhetoric and logical fallacies. And as a result, because we have this the availability of cheap, crappy products that are positioned to us in a way that target our emotions, we go buying them, they fail, we go buying some more, and the solution to this is that we're using too much energy, we're using too many resources. We have to go and have a smart meter installed in our houses, or 2 smart meters, or 3 smart meters installed, each of which are emitting extremely powerful radiation, but each of which are communicating extremely sensitive data back to our energy providers, and that data is then, able to be sold on or mined or accessed from whoever, under whatever law is now available. We have this surveillance society where apparently we no longer have the right to live in privacy. So every element of our life is now going to be under the microscope. And I'll occasionally, not so much maybe nowadays, because I think people are starting to recognise the fact that something is amiss here. But I'll still occasionally hear people say, well, I've got nothing to hide. And there's a failure to recognise that throughout the ages, despots and psychopaths have found their ways into the highest echelons of society. And we have natural predators. There are some pretty nasty people out there who desire to know literally everything about us. We might not. We're probably thinking about whether or not we can make some nice soup for lunch, or should I have another cup of coffee, or should I have a cup of tea instead? We should be careful about what information we give away about ourselves. We have the right to privacy. We have the right to not be molested. There are certain inalienable rights that we have that nobody can give us, that nobody can take away from us. We're effectively, born free individuals, and as long as we don't, and I think this is kind of common law principles as well, as long as we don't cause harm to others, then, we should have a right to live our lives in relative privacy. But the bottom line of this smart meter plan and this Internet of Things is that we're going to be losing every element of our privacy. So if you say that you don't have anything to hide, then I would argue that the fact that you're wearing clothes right now, I would imagine most of your listeners are like that. Suggests that most of us do have something to hide and things that we'd rather not share. And when you realise that, throughout the ages, that there has been a desire for a greater insight into, what you're doing, we have a right to privacy, and my view is we should be protecting that.
I absolutely agree. It's interesting when you say, people say to you they've got nothing to hide. I was having a conversation with a very good friend and someone else we were walking with that day, and we were talking about the fact that where I lived, there'd been somebody very badly beaten up, and he was in hospital, and in effect they were using the cameras and the information on the cameras to find out who it was that had done this. And in the same article, they'd been saying about the fact that they were considering putting cameras out into the more suburban areas, which is where we lived. And I was quite horrified about this. I really don't want cameras. They're not actually proven to be having that big an impact on the reduction of crime. You know, I feel that they are surveillance more than anything. And my friends just said, well, I've got nothing to hide. What do you have to hide? I said, I don't have anything to hide. I just feel that actually I don't want to be watched. And if I am being watched, who's watching the watcher? And what sort of information are they watching about me? And also, at the moment, I'm not breaking the law. And, you know, under the laws currently, you know, my friends were going, well, you've got nothing to hide. You're not breaking the law. And I said, yeah, but at the moment I'm not. But how do we know that someone doesn't keep that? And then at some stage, legislation is changed, and all of a sudden, I was breaking the law, doing something which, innocently enough, I was, you know, I was doing in my daily life previously. And this is what really bothers me. It's been this slow, incremental change, and I really want to know, as a woman as well, who's watching me actually, because the people that get into these roles, who are sometimes watching the cameras, are not exactly the people that you would want watching.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, you and I don't desire to have dominion over people.
No.
You know, I'm not interested in what my next door neighbour's doing. I really could not care less what my neighbours are doing. You know, but this goes again to the next stage, whereby if there is a continual data stream of what's happening in our home, then what happens, you know, I heard about a case recently, but I haven't been able to validate this, of where somebody was able to access smart meter data online in Canada and was able to determine when children were present in homes on their own without adult presence. And they were able to do that by looking at device usage patterns, and devices that are exclusively used by children, devices that are exclusively used by adults, and devices that are used by both. So if you can, and again, you know, I would have no interest in doing this, but, you know, we apparently have to have, and we all know very high profile cases of where paedophiles have successfully predated children. You know, there are people out there who would like to have an idea of when kids are home alone, or youngsters are home alone. You know, despite what your views might be on leaving kids alone, you know, we seem to be giving away all this data about ourselves, but there doesn't appear to be, you know, a level of protection and immunity building whereby our behaviour is changing. We're willingly giving away all of this information and carrying on as though everything's fine. But, you know, history tells us that, you know, there might be normalcy bias where, you know, everything's okay tomorrow, but okay today, but tomorrow, you know, things might be quite different. You know, this is very sensitive data that's being gleaned here, and I, for one, wouldn't like anybody else to know really what's going on in that house. That's not because I'm doing anything untoward. It's because it's none of their business. It's none of anybody's business besides my own. And, you know, if we look at this, I have a document here which we posted in the early days of our Stop Smart Meters campaign. We're only 6 months old, I think. We created our site back in January. One of the first stories we posted was titled "Are Smart Meters Being Funded by the US Military?"
Interesting.
A Freedom of Information request that was obtained by Angel Di Fazio, who is the director of the National Toxic Encephalopathy Foundation in the US. And this FOIA request showed that there had been a $300 million grant from the federal government to NV Energy, which was a company in the States to install smart meters. And on the authorization line, there were two codes. One was a fairly straightforward designation on using grant agreements, but if you did a search for the second code, it identified it as US Armed Forces Research and Development. Now, I've got every respect for people in our military, But why the hell are they interested in getting access to what we're doing at home?
Indeed.
So this, and goodness knows where else, where the funding's coming from. That's just in the States. And what I'd say as well is that this is a global project. Something that I'll have online by the time this broadcast goes out is a map showing just how many smart meter deployments are happening. This is being sold apparently at a time where the government has realised that there is great benefit to smart meters being rolled out. So, it's a great idea. Let's get them all in place by 2019. British Gas is so eager to get these things in. They've already rolled out 400,000. They want to have 2 million in place by the end of next year, and they've already been told that they're going to have to replace at least a quarter of them because the specifications are wrong, because the specs are still being agreed across the industry with the government at the moment. But BG, have got dollar signs flashing in their eyes. BG have said, we think the benefits for our customers are going to be so great, we don't care whether we've got to replace smart meters in the future. We want to get as many of these things out as possible right now. But the fact of the matter is, these things are going out everywhere. Yeah. Literally every continent, possibly with the exception of, the Arctics, have large-scale smart meter deployments happening.
I actually didn't realise until I started researching for this interview a little bit more, because I know about them because I've been posting about them for a while, because I've been watching what PG&E have been doing in the States. I think in California, I think it was. But I think that's the electricity company there, because I was fascinated by what they were doing. But I didn't realise how they were being implemented across the world until I started researching for yourself.
Yeah. This is a global program.
Yeah.
There are quite a number of stakeholders here in the UK. Let me see. I did make a note. So we've got, I think, we've obviously got the big energy and gas companies, the big utilities are rolling out smart water meters as well. And one thing that I'll maybe just touch upon is the fact that we published a report by Dr. Andrew Goldsworthy, who I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Which how long have we got left, by the way, Gary?
I've got as long as you want to talk, to be honest.
Okay. So we published this report by Andrew Goldsworthy called "The Biological Effects of Weak Electromagnetic Fields," and it was his research that clued me into the fact that low levels of electromagnetic radiation cause calcium ion damage, and Dr. Goldsworthy's research suggests that can be linked to a whole host of follow-on problems. This is basically calcium ion damage results in leakage of cell membranes.
Yeah, basically it changes the neurons of the brain, doesn't it? And it stimulates activity to happen. So, yeah. You're going to... it's not just there, it actually happens throughout the whole body. So effectively you get leakage of your cells because it affects the cell membrane.
That's right, yeah. He talks about the neurological effects, but he also talks about other effects as well.
Because it creates false signals as well. Because once you've changed the membrane of the cell, you change the ability of the cell to signal effectively, and to receive and transmit information. And on top of that, with the DNA side of things, it's you are changing the makeup of your body, not just for now, but also for generations to come. You can't turn it round.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll say as a quick segue, we published a cartoon that was drawn up for us by Barry Trower, who's a former government physicist and microwave warfare expert, very recently on our site, which shows the intergenerational effects associated with exposure to electromagnetic radiation for girls. Mm. And it's an absolute mind blower. But going back to this report by Dr. Goldsworthy, another thing that he drew out was his research into the effects of exposing water to electromagnetic radiation.
Oh, this is really fascinating research. Yeah, tell us about this, because it is fascinating.
Well, we have these smart water meters that are now coming, being rolled out. And again, I'll say with some caution that there are a number of different kinds of smart water meters. I've seen one which is called the Profit Maximizer. So if you're any discerning, procurement guy in Thames Water or Sun Water, and you're looking to find the meter that will help you to successfully maximise your profits, that might be a good one to go for. But a lot of these meters expose the water to use electromagnetic flow detection technology, as well as long-wave radio technology to communicate usage back to the local, either a very localized kind of wand that, when waved over the road, picks up a reading. But some of them actually, I understand that Thames Water are in partnership with BAE Systems, Detica, and Census. And I believe that some of the technology that's being used there is long-wave radio technology. Okay. But again, some of these meters are continually exposing the water to electromagnetic radiation. And Dr. Goldsworthy's report, which is available on our site, shows that the effect of exposing water to EMR and then consuming that water has the same effect on the body as being exposed to the electromagnetic radiation itself. If I'm not paraphrasing him incorrectly. And I know that clarification has been sought and not received on how some of these technologies, whether or not they've been safety tested, how much electromagnetic radiation they're exposing the water to, and whether or not any of these companies are actually aware of the problems, and if they are aware, what their view is particularly on Dr. Goldsworthy's paper.
Well, I was trained that we are 75% water, 75% water, and in effect, we are water beings, and if we are changing that molecular structure of water that we are putting into our body, we are fundamentally going to become what that water is.
Yeah.
And also, it, like I said before, it increases the toxicity of the poisons already in the body because you've changed the membrane.
That's right, it does. So if you have any heavy metals in your body, if you've got methyl mercury amalgam fillings, or if you've ever had exposure to heavy metal adjuvants in vaccines, or if you go out house on any given day and you breathe in toxic fumes from car exhaust or heavy industry or whatever it might be, then the argument that's laid out in this paper by Dr. Goldsworthy is you will see an increase in toxicity of those poisons in the body when you're exposed to water which has been exposed to electromagnetic radiation. So it's bad news. I mean, we have to get some answers here. I'm not going to sit here and say that there is any kind of deliberate attempt to do any of this, but I do feel as though there is an overwhelming amount of evidence which shows electromagnetic fields cause harm to humans, animals, and plants. And again, in my view, we can't really mess around with water. This is the kind of stuff we go looking for on other planets. It's fundamental to us. So you might be able to switch off your mobile phone. You might be able to choose whether or not you buy an iPad. You might be able to put shielding around your bed to protect yourself from your neighbour's Wi-Fi. But if we have smart meters coming at us, if we have, a supply of water into our house that's being exposed to electromagnetic radiation, and there is evidence that suggests water being exposed to EMR is bad, we have to get to the truth of the matter before any of these technologies become mainstream and before the damage potentially becomes, too late to reverse.
I absolutely agree. Well, Mike, that's been brilliant. And can you just give my audience some contact details, the website address, so that they can actually find you and get some of this absolutely brilliant research that you've got on there?
Sure. Well, you mentioned at the start that you're offline to me that people that listen to your show are kind of interested in solutions, and here's where the good news comes in. We have a number of ways that we think people can really help to make a massive difference here. Our site is stopsmartmeters.org.uk. We're also running we have lots of research on there. It's by no means comprehensive, but it's a start. We have a leaflet that you can download. We also have a great print partner called Aura Print up in Huddersfield, where if you go onto our site and look on the right-hand side, you'll see our leaflet. You can download and print it for yourself, but we've got this relationship with Aura Print whereby if you wanted to buy 250 leaflets for yourselves, these are really high quality. We don't have any involvement in the transaction. You buy this direct from Aura Print, but we've got a really heavy discount. You can buy 250 leaflets for £27. So you can hit probably everybody in your street and a few neighbouring streets as well. Maybe give out some to your local cafe or local shopkeepers, people that you know. Leave some in your local gym. Anywhere else that you might be able to think. I tend to leave them on people's windscreens, if I go shopping or wherever. And Liz and I tried to incorporate the main issues, about the fact that these things aren't healthy, they're not cheaper, they're certainly not greener, which is another big way in which these things are being sold. They're not private. But a key thing is that they're not mandatory. So if you can show people that these things are bad news, give them the information, give them the awareness, then you can also highlight the fact that they've got the right to refuse one of these things. And we would encourage everybody to do that, but please do reach out to people. There's a film that's coming out in a few months' time that we've helped to bring to life. If you go to thepowerfilm.org, that's a talented bunch of filmmakers in the States, in Canada, and we're going to be encouraging people to do screenings of that. It should be available free online. You can download and install the smart meter. Do not install smart meter sign from our website. If you get into this, then arrange a talk with maybe some of your neighbours. Invite them around, do a little bit of research for yourselves. Become a subject matter expert on this. We don't have the last word on this. We encourage everybody to get their own local campaigns running. Please do your bit. If you're listening to me now and you're thinking, this is bad news, we have to draw a line in the sand here and say no to this. For me, this really does represent the line in the sand for me. I just want to have a happy life, and when I really got to understand what smart meters are about, it motivated me into actually doing something about it, because this is one area of the from what I can see, this Orwellian campaign to bring about total surveillance. This is the arguably the first bit of technology that we have to provide consent to having. So we don't have to give that consent, but most people don't know what smart meters are, let alone how they work. So if you can help to change hearts and minds in that view, if you are listening to this and thinking that you want to get involved, that is nature's immune response to the society that we are seeing being created under our noses. So please act on that impulse to get involved. There's other resources on our sites. By all means, write to your MP. There have been some support from MP in Sefton. I know Eileen O'Connor, who runs the Radiation Research Trust, has successfully worked with her MP in Sefton. They presented a document to number 10 last year, which was arguably a key reason why the smart meters have been announced to be voluntary, because they highlighted some of the research that had been done here. So, in fact, there was one area, Debbie, if I can, that's quite important that I just wanted to touch on before I go.
Yeah, go on.
What's actually being said here about how safe smart meters are, and one of these common arguments that I'm hearing against our arguments that smart meters aren't safe is, well, we're working with industry, we're working with the Health Protection Agency, and they comply with ICNIRP standards. ICNIRP is an international body that researches the effects of ionising, non-ionising radiation. And what ICNIRP have said is that, these are the thresholds, and we comply with those thresholds. But again, there's some very careful wordplay happening here in my view. ICNIRP at a conference which the Radiation Research Trust ran, I think back in 2007, the head of ICNIRP said, you should not be using our standards as a line of defence. We don't have the last word on appropriate radiation levels, and you should be taking into account, governments and industry should be taking into account any new research that is showing. This is still a new technology, so there's a massive amount of research being done on this, every day. And they said, don't use us as a defence mechanism. Keep researching this, and as and when appropriate, introduce different standards. I'm kind of paraphrasing there, but ICNIRP have effectively supported the notion that their standards should be reviewed on a continual basis to make sure that they are appropriate. What happened a few years ago in response to part of the work about this was a group of 15 scientists and experts got together and put together a report called the Bioinitiative Report, and that led to the EU voting ICNIRP standards as obsolete, and this was 500 odd votes to 16 votes in favour of getting rid of ICNIRP standards. And we still follow those standards here in the UK. In my view, the spirit of what that ICNIRP body has put forward is really not being followed, and instead it's politics that are being played here, and that's politics with our health and the health of generations to come. When you consider that these effects are intergenerational, so again we put that on our site as well. Last thing I'd say is we've run a separate campaign, or a kind of campaign as part of our Stop Smart Meter campaign called Don't Smart Meter Me. I'll give you a direct link, which is don'tsmartmeter.me. Put www in front of that if you like. That'll take you straight into a page where you can add your name and address to a form, a little widget on our site which we've enabled, and a message of non-consent and a notice of non-consent and a notice of liability will be sent to 76 at current count, industry, government, NGO and other interested third parties. The HPA are on there as well, saying we do not consent to having a smart meter installed. If we encounter any harm from smart meters being installed in neighbouring properties, we're going to take into account your support of the smart meter agenda. If we do experience any harm, and we have to take action. And we've listed 34 reasons which aren't comprehensive, but which provide a view of why people are choosing to opt out of this programme. Please help us. We're not asking for money. This is entirely self-funded. We need to kind of spread out like a diaspora and effectively create a wave of opposition to this smart meter programme to stop it, because as far as I can see, there's been a massive amount of research that's been done into all of these problems. There's been an awful lot of noise made as well, and the powers that be are not interested. They're not listening. They're providing rhetoric. They're providing, some words, but they're not taking appropriate action. So, we have to help each other.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. This interview's been absolutely fantastic, Mike, and I really appreciate your time and spending it with me and my audience. And I can hear you're absolutely passionate about it. And I now hope that everybody takes the bit between their teeth and stops this mesh from happening across us all, because that's what's starting to happen. Let's take part in this campaign to not be part of this smart metering. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thanks very much, Deb.